Good morning, everyone. I was originally asked to speak for about 30 minutes and then possibly take a few questions. Then after I saw my boss, who you heard speak at on Wednesday afternoon, and I heard the tough questions that you guys were asking her, I figured that I'll probably speak for about 90 minutes to avoid the questions. I'm just kidding. Let's see how far I get. So, closing ceremony. It's sort of like the USLS graduation ceremony, and I'm like your commencement speaker, if you will. Usually, these commencement speakers are some kind of famous person, so who comes and says something wise, inspirational, profound to you to take with you on your journey. And I must be kind of famous, right? I mean, otherwise, why would I be sitting up here? Why was I sitting up here on Wednesday? Why am I the guest of honor? I'm just a regular bloke. I feel slightly uncomfortable being called the guest of honor because the honor goes to a lot of other people than me. I'm sure, as I said, many of you were wondering what this grumpy guy was doing on the panel on Wednesday. And I get that a lot. People often tell me to smile more, be more approachable. At one point when I was working in Nepal, a colleague nicknamed me Spike, as in the bulldog from Tom and Jerry. Other times when I was working with Helen Clark, the former administrator for UNDP and also former Prime Minister in New Zealand, I realized that either I don't wear sunglasses, or if I wear sunglasses, I need to smile, because otherwise they think I'm the bodyguard. So I guess that's my first advice to you all, profound as it may be. Smile. Especially in the face of some of these horrible images that we saw this morning. You're smiling not because it's funny, but because the smile just opens up the conversation and opens up hearts. Let me start also by saying that I'm so impressed with the turnout, both on Wednesday and throughout the week. I hope you've really had a great time in Thailand, the land of smiles, as it may be. I hope you've learned a lot, made new friends, built lasting networks. Judging from the speeches from our young delegates, you have. So I'm very happy that USLS and Kim and all the team from the regional hub and my team have been able to bring some difference in your lives. I hope you had a chance to see a little bit of Bangkok as well. On your service day yesterday, I hope it was fun, challenging. I saw pictures of people being stuck in the mud. So some of you definitely got your hands dirty, which was part of the idea, get you out of your comfort zone. Interestingly, the pictures that I saw, it seemed to be the girls who were down in the mud and the guys who were up on the dry land. So guys, you need to step it up, huh? Two of the communities that you visited were grantees of UNDP's small grants program, and they work to conserve, for example, mangrove forests and coastal ecosystems. Actually, a similar community down in Phuket, which unfortunately is a bit far for you guys to go during this session because it's about an hour's flight from here. But this community who does very much similar work and have been doing this kind of work in protecting mangrove forests since basically the tsunami in 2004, actually have just won a global prize called the Equator Prize, which they will go to New York to accept for their commitment to protecting the environment. So communities very similar to two of the communities you were in yesterday, actually getting this local recognition of little local initiatives actually making a global impact. Let me just give you a quick rundown of sort of my career or my life, just so you kind of get an idea of where I come from. So I'm 29 years old. Ish. 43 is more like it. I'm from Denmark and actually born in Uganda, so I guess I can claim some African heritage. I went to local public school in rural Denmark, boarding school for high school. I did my bachelor's degrees and master's degree from the University of Copenhagen, both in economics. I started with studying economics with a plan of becoming an investment banker or some other kind of corporate hotshot. But I quickly realized that my heart just wasn't in it. My dad's a doctor and my mom's a nurse, and after a couple of years of economics, I seriously considered dropping out and saying, okay, well, maybe medicine is where I should go, since that's where the last 5 generations of my family has been, so maybe why am I trying to change that? I did tell myself that I should at least finish my bachelor's degree in economics, and lo and behold, final year of my undergrads, the world opened up through development economics and environmental economics, and I actually found my passion, and I decided to stick with it. So I finished my master's degree in the year 2000, and during that time I also worked part-time as a junior clerk, or whatever you call it, in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Denmark. Learned about the Junior Professional Officers Program in the UN, and a post opened up as I was finishing my thesis in Bhutan. I admit I had to look at a map too, figure out where is it, but nevertheless I applied for the post, and I got my first job with the UN as a junior program officer in UNICEF in Bhutan. I moved on from Bhutan to India, not to New Delhi, because that would be too easy. I was in Lucknow, in Uttar Pradesh, northern India, and I was part of the fight against polio. As we heard about, polio is now eradicated from India, but I was part of that fight. It took a little longer than planned. I think when I left India in 2005, experts were saying this is the last year of polio in India. 10 years later, now we're done. I moved on to the Maldives after the tsunami and worked there for UNICEF as well. And then kind of took a break from the UN, just a couple of years, did some corporate finance stuff in the telecommunications industry in Denmark, just to try new things, but UN was pulling me back, and I didn't enjoy living in my home country much, so back out I went. I worked in Nepal for 4 years during the peace process and the constitution building, and then 4 years in New York, working for the administrator, as I mentioned, Helen Clark, and flying all over the world with her, experiencing so many incredible countries that I never would have experienced if it wasn't for that job. And now I've been here in Thailand for the last 2 years and some bits. So what have I learned that might be useful to you? Well, first of all, and some of you might think I'm crazy for saying this, but it doesn't really matter what you study. I honestly have not used more than maybe 5% of what I learned during my economic studies in my career. It's more about skills for problem solving and about being rational and having the right mindset. Now, granted, some of that you learn at your economic studies or your political science and so on, but it's the same skills that you learn whether you're an engineer or an economist or a political scientist. It's the ability to solve problems. So that's number one. Number two, find your passion and do what you love. And this is such a cliche, but I have honestly had very, very few bad days in my career because I really do love what I do. And if it is at all possible, that is, you have to drive for that because it will keep you motivated. It will allow you to wake up every morning and be excited to go to work. Have a plan. Think about where you want to be in 5 years or in 10 years, and then plan backwards from there. Figure out what do I need to be there, be it education, additional training, networks and so on, but have a plan. But also don't worry if that plan changes, because the world changes, and sometimes you just have to change with it. So don't be afraid to have to change your plans. And don't try to predict the future. Nobody can. I mean, think of Trump, Brexit. Who had predicted that? No one. Well, maybe one guy sitting in a basement, his parents' basement somewhere, had these wild ideas. But really, nobody had predicted this. So don't waste time predicting the future or trying to predict the future. Instead, do whatever you can to create the future that you want. And be ready to fail. And be proud of your failures. How can you be proud of your failures? Well, by learning from them. I call it failing forward. If you look at the entrepreneurs coming in Silicon Valley, for example, you're not considered a real part of the group unless you have at least 4 or 5 failed enterprises behind you, right? But the thing is, they learn from every failure. So don't be afraid to fail, but use your failures to move yourself forward. And again, in the spirit of all you budding young entrepreneurs and innovators, very, very important, share your ideas. It's the only way that you can get them validated, and the only way to bring them to life. And don't be afraid that someone might steal them, because they're your ideas, and no one has the same passion and belief in your ideas except you. So even if somebody does try to steal them, you know what? They're likely to fail because they did not give birth to that idea. But you have to share them because just brewing in your mind, they'll never become anything. So share your ideas. And build unlikely partnerships. Look around the room, find the person that you think you have the least in common with, and that's where you start. That's where you will start really learning things. Don't start mingling with people who have the same ideas and same mindsets as you, because you're just going to reinforce each other and you won't learn anything. So look for and I don't mean this literally, look for the unlikely bedfellows. Not literally. And second to last, it's the team that matters. It's not the issue. If you have an amazing team, you can tackle almost any issue. If you look at some of the big venture capital companies, most of the time they back a team, not an idea. or initially maybe they like the idea that that team has, they let that team work through that idea, develop it further, but then they say, you know what, we have another thing that we would like you to look at, so forget about that idea, you've done your best with that, here's another idea, we want your team, we're investing in your team. So build great teams. And lastly, be humble, but be bold. Now that might be confusing, but be humble in a sense that don't be an arrogant prick, basically, right? Know what you can do, but don't brag about it. And be bold in asking for things, asking for support, asking for partnerships. Because you know what, the worst thing that can happen is that you get a no, and then you just move on to the next one. So ask, be bold. So there you go. That's pretty much my 10 pieces of advice, or 11 if you include the smile. It's your mindset and problem-solving skills that matters. Find your passion, have a plan. Plans change. Don't predict the future, create it. Fail forward, share your ideas, build unlikely partnerships. Team matters, be humble and be bold. I hope that you can use some of this. I hope you have a safe journey home. I hope you have success in life. And I hope that you will always, always remember to smile. Thank you.